It is my honor to introduce the presenter of today's civic engagement session. She is a dynamic speaker with knowledge, strength, and leadership. Tiffany Chang Lawson serves as the Executive Director of Governor Tom Wolf's Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. The Commission is the state's advocate agency for the diverse Asian American and Pacific Islander communities across the Commonwealth. In this role, Tiffany Chang Lawson oversees statewide Commission initiative, events, and community partnerships. Please give a very warm welcome to Tiffany Chang Lawson.
Assalamu alaikum. So I want to thank you all for having me here today. This literally came out like after a meeting. What was that? October 26th. A group of women from the community who are sitting here and I had a meeting with our Director of the Office of Homeland Security, Marcus Brown. And we were literally just stepped off the elevator. We didn't actually get far from the elevator. And we talked about, wanting to have an opportunity to educate the community on some ways that I have learned in my time in government about how to effectively engage with appointed and elected officials. So today, I don't propose to say that I have all the answers or I know everything, but I want to share some of what I've learned with all of you. And I want this to be an opportunity for us to also engage in a dialogue. If you guys have questions, please feel free to ask. I want this to be an opportunity so that we can learn together. With that being said, I also wanted to share that, I hope that, I know we're videotaping and I know we also have friends on Skype, but I want this to be a brave space for all of us. I have a couple safe space rules I always like to share. One, that this is a brave and safe space for all of us here. The second, that if you have a cell phone, if you could please turn it off, either turn it off or if you could make the sound, put it on silent, I would appreciate that. So we won't have interruptions while we have our conversation together. The third is that, I know that we all come to this room with different life experiences. Even though if we share the same religious belief, we have different life experiences. We come from different countries, we come from different familial backgrounds, and so respecting people who might have different opinions. This is a place for us to feel safe to voice how we feel and to have civic discourse. So I just want to share that if we can respect others' feelings, other people's confidentiality, I think that's really important. And lastly, I hope you guys have fun, and I hope that we learn something together. So really quickly, I want to give you guys a general overview of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. How many people in the room are immigrants? Okay. How many people in the room were actually born in the United States? Okay. So regardless if you're an immigrant or you're actually born in the United States, unless you can remember everything, if you're born in the United States, from your 8th grade civics course, most likely you've forgotten a lot of this information. If you're an immigrant, unfortunately in the United States, we don't have a American civic history or civic lesson 101 when you're stepping off the plane. So some of what I'm sharing with you is going to be new. Friend, please come in. We have many, many seats. Please sit more towards the front. Okay. So here in Pennsylvania, I'm talking about the Pennsylvania General Assembly. The U.S. Congress is something different, but I'm just specifically talking about Pennsylvania General Assembly. In the Pennsylvania General Assembly, we have the state Senate and the state House. In the state Senate, we have 50 state senators that are elected to 4-year terms, okay? Kind of forget everything you know about Congress and the Senate because they have 6-year terms. So we have 4-year terms in the state Senate. The president of the Senate is the lieutenant governor, and there is the president. So we have the president of the Senate, and then there's the president pro temp. I think it's pro tempore, and he is also elected. And basically, because the lieutenant governor serves as the president of the Senate, he isn't always at the Senate. However, our lieutenant governor, Mike Stack, is very engaged with our state Senate because he was formerly a state senator. But the president pro temp is Senator Scarnati, and oftentimes he is there with the lieutenant governor, and he steps in for the lieutenant governor when he is not there to preside over the Senate. Does that make sense? So takeaway from that is top 2 people in the state Senate are the lieutenant governor, who serves as the president of the Senate, and the president I think it's pro tempore. I always get my pronunciation incorrect. The president pro tem is what we usually call him, is the person who is elected and serves. He's elected not the way we elect people, but by the House leadership, by the Senate leadership. He's elected by Senate leadership to serve. Whoever is in the ruling party, so right now it's GOP, they internally elect the president pro tem. They make recommendations, and the whole Senate will then formally have a vote on who is the president pro tem. Any questions about that? Okay. Again, the salary is $78,315 a year. Guess who pays that salary? All of us. Yes, we do. Again, these are public servants. I am a public servant. Shaquila is a public servant. I serve at the pleasure of the governor, but we serve you, the people of Pennsylvania. So when you're thinking about, we'll talk about it a little later, actually approaching your elected officials and your appointed officials, think about it. You pay their salary. You have a right to have your voice heard. It is your constitutional right. So the last election was May 16th, 2017. How many people participated? It's very, very important. Elections don't happen every 4 years. They happen every 6 months. Every 6 months. May 16th was our municipal election. That was when we chose our party's candidates for the municipal general election, which will happen on November 7th. How many people have a voting plan for November 7th? It's very, very important. You've got to know where your polling place is. You've got to know what times your polling place is open. And for those who have to take care of elderly people or for those who have to work, you need to actually make a plan. Figure out when you're going to go, when you're actually available to go. So it's very, very important to make a voting plan. State representatives, there are 203 state representatives in the Pennsylvania State House. The length of term is 2 years. Okay, 2 years, you guys. Think about that. That's critical. Every other year, they're campaigning to get reelected. What does this mean? They need your votes, right? You guys have a state representative wherever we live in Pennsylvania. We have a state representative. They should be hearing from you. 1, you pay their salary. 2, they need to count on your vote to get reelected the next year. They're literally campaigning every other year. So it's critically important. Only 2-year terms. That's very, very short. Very, very short in a political lifetime. Again, their last election was May 16th. Their next election is November 7th. They're on cycles. So they're on cycles. So not everybody gets in the same year. But just the next election, just remember, the next election is November 7th. How often do elections happen? Every 6 months, okay? I'm going to keep quizzing you guys. Every 6 months. Okay. So doing your homework. I am a stickler for doing your homework. I believe that success is opportunity plus preparation equals success, right? So when we're thinking about having a successful meeting with an appointed or an elected official, we really need to do our homework. So ways that I recommend doing your homework is if you know who the legislators are that you're going to meet with, or the cabinet secretary, or the person in state government, Google them. If they're a cabinet secretary, or if they're an elected official, they will have a profile on Wikipedia. And also if they're an elected official, if they're a state senator or a state rep, they will have their own biography page on the General Assembly website. So you can learn a lot of information about them. You can learn where they went to college, their spouse's name, if they have children, how many children. You learn all these things from their bios. The most successful meetings that I have seen between community leaders and advocates and an elected official or even an appointed official are meetings where people have points of connection, right? We all like to feel like we know each other, that there's something we have in common. And if you're able to do your homework beforehand, you can actually find out what you might have in common with that person. Again, you can know, do they have children? What college they went to? Where did they grow up? Many of them may have gone to school around here. They may have gone to Cumberland Valley, so you might have that in common. Your children go to Cumberland Valley, right? Let's talk about the cafeteria food. It's terrible. But so you know what I mean? There's points in common. And you may learn something about that person that you didn't even realize you had in common. You might have gone to the same school, the same college. You might have lived in the same area for a certain time. Who knows? You want to know what their background is, and you always want to do your due diligence before going into a meeting. Okay? I'll tell you another tidbit. Mrs. Wolf grew up in Pakistan. She grew up in Karachi. Yep, her father was a US diplomat. So she spent parts of her childhood in Pakistan, right? Those are things that you can use to connect with. You can be like, to Governor Wolf, right? Because he loves his wife. And, and those are things that would be important for him to know as well. So things like this, it tells you so many things about the governor, that he worked in his family's warehouse, you know, all the things that he did. So this took me probably 0.5 seconds to do. And you guys are probably much smarter than I am, so it'll take you less time.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If I am meeting with the governor, does he or someone for him Google us as well?
Absolutely. We create briefings for the governor. They are, it depends on the length of the meeting, but I have created many briefings in my day. We tell him all the identifying information. So let's say hypothetically, it's CAIR, Pennsylvania, that's meeting with the governor. If I'm the one that is running, staffing the governor for that meeting, I will give him background on CAIR, Pennsylvania, and I will list all of your names, and I will list, if I can find out ahead of time, your places of work or your titles, what you do, and just identifying information that he should know, and also the phonetic pronunciation of all of your names. Because his biggest pet peeve is saying names incorrectly. So another tidbit that I wanted to give you guys is the Pennsylvania General Assembly. How many people in this room have been concerned about bad legislation that has been introduced in the House and Senate? There are about, don't quote me on this, but I think there are about 12 anti-immigrant bills right now between the House and Senate. And some of them are just, you know, hanging out, and some of them have been moving. So you, just like any good lobbyist and anybody who works as a legislative representative, can go on to our website and find out bad pieces of legislation. How do you do that? Let me tell you. So you go onto the website, you go to the Pennsylvania General Assembly, you just Google it, and then you see I clicked legislation, the legislation button. You click the legislation button, and then it takes you to this like big page. Oh, sorry. And so if you don't know who the elected official was that introduced the bill, if you don't have a bill number, that's totally okay. What I recommend then is going to the keyword/phrase, and you can type in a keyword. I like to type in immigrant, and it'll bring up a lot of the anti-immigrant legislation. You could also maybe type in Muslim, you know what I mean? You can type in any keyword that you can think of, like Islam or Muslim or anything that you think, and it'll pop up bills that have that language in them, which could be xenophobic, Islamophobic bills, anti-immigrant bills. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? This is so easy. You guys could do this every single morning with your coffee if you wanted to. I don't know if it'd be good for your mental health, but you could literally do this every single day. And it's a way for you as a community member to make sure that you're keeping abreast of the latest legislation. Unless you're relying on the Governor's Asian Pacific American Commission's newsletter for your legislative updates, which I totally recommend, I would also recommend doing this, because if I've learned anything in my 4.5 years in this role, it's that I want to democratize knowledge of how government works. This is something that all of us should know and have the right to know, right? Because again, yes, Asna?
Will the website tell you how far it is the bill is in the process?
Yes, it will. So let's say hypothetically we were able to tack onto a bill right here. It'll tell you which committee it's in, and I believe it should tell you what number of consideration. Yeah. So, okay. I'm not gonna get in the weeds too much. If we want to do a 2.0 presentation, we totally can, but I just want to give you guys a basic primer today, okay? So navigating the office, this is critically important. How do you navigate the office of an elected official or an appointed official? So most likely, sometimes, like in the Capitol, if it's a day they're in session, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, but sometimes you might not get to meet with the actual elected official. They might send their staffer that handles community affairs to meet with you, okay? That is just the reality. Or if it's if we were doing something around sanctuary cities, it might be their staffer that handles immigration. So a lot of the times you will meet with a staffer. So for instance, like sometimes if you request a meeting for Governor Wolf, you get me. Okay, so I'm the staffer that would meet with you about an issue around potentially Islamophobia, xenophobia, because that is part of what I do for Governor Wolf. So if the elected official is able to attend the meeting, wonderful, that's awesome. But if not, remember, it's not the end of the world. One thing I want to add is I know that Muslim Capital Day 2.0 recently got canceled because the legislative day got canceled, right, November 15th, and it was a big blow. Oh.
We are considering.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the word is not official or the decision is not final yet, but just as a background, November 15th was our day for the second MCD, and we just received notice that the session for that day is probably going to be canceled or is canceled, hence House of Representatives will not be in Harrisburg.
So can I make a recommendation? Because I did talk to Jacob yesterday, and I was very upset, he was very upset, because it's like, oh my goodness, what's happening? The second Muslim day might get canceled. Okay, but let me tell you, it's not the end of the world. What my recommendation would be is to utilize November and December to meet with your elected officials in their district offices. Because when they're in their district offices, you can get more of their time. Because when they're in the Capitol for a session day, they're running from committee to session. It's a little crazy for them, let alone them and you. So when you meet with them in their district offices, they're a little bit more relaxed, and they might actually be able to give you more time because they just have more time to give. So you'll actually get a better shot of meeting with them in their district offices. And that would be my recommendation. Also, who's to say we can't use November and December to set up some meetings for you guys and members of the cabinet, more members of the cabinet. I know you met with Secretary Rivera and also Director Marcus Brown of our Office of Homeland Security, but you could meet, we have over 35 state agencies. You could meet with way more members of the cabinet. So we could also do that. And you could also do a Muslim Capital Day in the spring. So just some quick recommendations. So one other thing that I would recommend is you want to be prepared for your meetings with an elected official or either an appointed official. Put together an agenda, because it's not just good for them to know what you're going to be covering, so they can also prepare for the meeting, but also for you, because sometimes we get flustered when we're very passionate about an issue or we're doing something new for the first time. And if you have an agenda, you kind of figure out, you can prepare your thoughts ahead of time. Put together talking points for yourself. If you're meeting with an elected official, make sure you know which bills you're trying to advocate for or against. You know, put together talking points. If you're doing this on behalf of a community, or if CAIR is doing this, then I would hope that CAIR would be putting together some talking points for the community members that will be going into these meetings. And practice, practice, practice. How many people here live with somebody else in their home, like a child or a parent? Okay, there's somebody else you can talk to, right? A dog you can maybe talk to, but not as good. But if you have another human being, or if you have friends, you can role play. One of you can pretend to be Senator Scarnati and somebody else, or your state legislators. Who are your state legislators here in Upper Island Township? Oh, Rothman, Representative Rothman. Who's your state senator?
Mike.
No, Representative is Cheryl Deloche here.
No, ours is different. Not zip code is different.
Oh, Delozier.
Deloche is
Okay.
She's in the campus.
Okay. So one of you can pretend to be Representative Rothman and the other person can pretend to be the advocate. Because sometimes, honestly, or you can just do it in front of a mirror. Because sometimes, honestly, it's just practice. It's getting used to having this type of conversation. Because if you don't do this for a living, you're not used to it, right? So practice, practice, practice. I know it sounds so silly, but if we were going to do a dance competition, right? If we're gonna go do like Bhangra or something, right? We would practice. Or the waltz, we would practice. Why don't we also practice our language for talking with elected and appointed officials?
Can I ask you
Yes.
something? I don't know if you're going to cover that. Like, how do you approach, like, there are Democrats and Republicans. There are some like-minded people and some are not. So do you approach them differently, and what's your recommendation is? And you can repeat the question so you can.
So Aisha asked, you know, we have Democratic representatives and we also have Republican elected officials. Is the approach the same for people that that it may be known that they've supported legislation that is against your community, the same way you would approach a friend. I think you have to read the situation and you have to approach it in a way that is most comfortable to you. I always say you get more flies with honey than vinegar. So you want to be pleasant, right? You want to be pleasant, because if you call them, you're like, get me a meeting. They're not gonna, you've been so terrible to my community. Most likely they're not gonna give you a meeting. But if you say, you know what, Senator so-and-so, I'd really love to give you some more demographic data on my community in your legislative district. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my family and how we came to live in your legislative district so you can get a better understanding of me and my community. How does that sound? If you're pleasant, and people, anybody, GOP, Democrat, people, human nature, we love stories. Innately, we love to learn, right? Everybody was a child at one time, and everybody still inside, this is my firm belief, that as we grow up into men and women, that honestly, we're just grown-up girls and boys. We're still children at heart. And everybody has a curiosity to learn. They may have been socialized in a way where they believe certain stories about certain people. But the way we break down those barriers and we break down those stereotypes is by telling stories about who we really are. It's about sharing about our experiences, about where we come from, about who we are, and humanizing ourselves and our community. I hate that I have to say that, because we should just live in a world where everybody respects everybody else and accepts and is inclusive, and we celebrate our diversity, but unfortunately we do not. So it is important that we, as an Asian American Pacific Islander community, as a Muslim community, that we claim our humanity for ourselves. And a big chunk of that is telling our stories to our elected officials. When Ali told me his family story, like, you know, I was this close from bursting out into tears, right? Incredibly powerful. Many of you in this room I have had very, very intimate conversations with. And when you share your stories with me, it moves me. The Muslim community is so dear and near to my heart. That's also just because of my lived experiences. But I think that if you shared those stories with these elected officials, it would take somebody that was like Scrooge McDuck to turn you away. I mean, I think we really have to tell our stories. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
And this is my other suggestion, is it is my belief that we're most successful when we know what we want to come out of that meeting. You should always go into every single meeting knowing what your expected outcome that you are looking to achieve. We don't have enough time. You guys are busy people. These elected officials are busy people. We can't just have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. We need, as a community, need to know what it is we want when we come out of that meeting. And a lot of that wherewithal is going to come from knowing what that individual, whether elected or appointed, what they're capable of doing. We don't want to ask them, if it's, you know, we're talking to a state senator, we're not going to ask them, we can talk about the Muslim ban, but they're not in Congress, and it's actually, a Muslim ban is an executive order made by the Trump administration. They can't change that. But what they can do is be against anti-immigrant legislation in the House or the Senate. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
I have a question. I know you are giving tips towards lobbying day, such as Muslim Capital Day, but how do we establish a connection with an elected representative? Is it only through donation? So beyond the Muslim Capital or a lobbying day in the Capitol, how do we get that? How do we actually find the time to tell, you know, in a more deep level these stories? And you can skip this if
No, that's a great question, and I will address it later on. But that's a great question. Professionally, I cannot tell you to donate, because I actually don't think I'm allowed to say that. But I can say it's important. This is important regardless, right? Regardless of party, regardless of, we have to support the people that support us. That's just what I'm going to say, right? Because if we don't support them, whether it's through our votes or by other means, how will they stay in elected office? How will they create change if we don't support them? Okay, so the goal of the meeting, again, you should know the outcomes you're looking to achieve, but also whether it's a staffer, a representative, a deputy secretary instead of a secretary, or the director of a bureau, the goal should always be to achieve a relationship. You want to build a relationship with this individual. Because even if it's not the elected official, even if it's just the staffer, they could be your champion on the inside, right? Many times not putting myself on a pedestal, it's what I'm supposed to do, but I'm able to help when you guys have meetings at the Capitol, I'm able to help you reserve rooms. It's good to have somebody on the inside who can help you to navigate. Does that make sense? Any questions around that? So again, each elected official or each appointed official's office is a little microcosm. It's a little world unto itself. And the better you understand the dynamics within the office, the better you will understand who gets which responsibilities, which staffer handles what. And because each staffer has a different specific role. Does that make sense? And let's use like an elected representative's office, like a House of Representatives person. They have smaller offices than state senators. They're going to have their capital office and also their district office. They'll have probably somebody that does a lot of their maybe multicultural outreach. Also might be, not all the time, but sometimes it's usually a person of color that handles multicultural outreach, unfortunately, whatever, by default. And they'll have somebody that handles their communications, right? Somebody that works on their press releases, helps them to coordinate with the either Democratic caucus press or the GOP caucus press. So they'll have different staffers in their offices that play these different roles. Any questions about that? Okay. Again, what makes the world go around? Relationships, relationships, relationships. Relationships are so important. This kind of goes to your point. So when you attend the meeting with the secretary, the staff person, or the elected official, definitely make sure you're building a rapport. This sounds so elementary, but smile. People respond to smiling. People respond to people they perceive to be engaged and happy and excited. Like, okay, if you're talking about terrible stuff and you're actually trying to hold one of those electeds accountable, then maybe you're not going to smile. But if you're just trying to really build the rapport and build the relationship, smile, be engaging, be pleasant, and be yourself. You don't have to be a stiff, you don't have to be so proper. Be yourself, be comfortable in your body. And you definitely want them to understand who you are and what your organization is all about, right? If you're there representing Muslims of Central PA, if you're there representing CAIR, you want to tell them about your organization and what you have done. If you have it can be helpful if you have like an annual report or something as literature to give them, that can be helpful so they can like peruse or have something to reference at a later point. Tell your story, right? Stories, again, so incredibly powerful. Elected officials, appointed officials, they're people just like you and I. They love getting hooked by a good story. We all love a good story, and we all like to hear stories. So again, this goes to your point on the official side, request to meet with them periodically to keep them in the loop about what you're doing. We should be consistent. Relationships are built on consistency. So even if there's only one annual Muslim Capital Day, you can go schedule meetings with them as often as you want. Just be like, hey, I wanted to tell you about some really cool work that Dawa in Action just did for people that survived Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. We got this much water together, this many clothes, this much food, and I just wanted to share that with you. We're doing this in your community. You can go update them as much as you want. Hey, my son just graduated and is looking for an internship. I'd love to connect him with your office. Would he be able to shadow you one day? I mean, just engage. A lot of times I think we as immigrants or we as the Asian American or the refugee immigrant community, because of the countries that we've come from, government was up here, or government was repressive and oppressive, and there wasn't the ability. But in the United States, we have a different government structure, and it's a government for the people, by the people. And so it is our job as Pennsylvanians to engage with our government. So yes, shame on elected officials for putting forth bad legislation that adversely impacts refugee, immigrant, Asian American, and other communities of color, but also shame on us for not doing a better job in advocating and engaging with them to let them know, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. And if you do that, we're going to hold you accountable because we vote too. Okay? You know, also be confident and professional when you're seeking to get a meeting with them. There's a fine line between annoying and pleasantly persistent, right? I'm a type of person that rarely gets annoyed. I'm used to working with the community. I love it. It's my whole life. This is my life's work. But there are people that can just come off a little annoying. And when you're annoying, it makes me less want to engage. So be pleasantly persistent. Yes, you can call. Yes, you can send emails. Totally do that. But you want to be pleasantly persistent. Because think about it. These staff people, these elected officials, these appointed officials, they're getting calls, they're getting emails all the time. I mean, it's their job to do that, but they're getting inundated with information all the time. Just be pleasantly persistent, again, because you want to be able to maintain that relationship. Treat them like you would want to be treated. That's my best piece of advice. Any questions on this point? Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the website where we can see the different legislations which are being considered. Can we see that who is supporting that legislation?
Yes.
And who is opposing those?
You can't see who's opposing it, but you can see who authored it and who co-sponsored it. Okay. So you can actually see which elected official sponsored the legislation and then who jumped on and co-sponsored it with them.
And can we have like an idea how many are in the support and how many are in against that?
Yeah, I mean, that is something maybe then you can call me for, and then I can give you I can do some digging for you and give you a little bit of the background of what's going on. Yep.
Thanks.
That's another thing. You guys don't have to reinvent the wheel. You have people like me that love and support you, and I want to help you. So tap into the resources that you have, the allies that you have that are already doing this work. And also CAIR, I'm sure, has legislative advocacy too, so they have people that are tracking legislation, or at least I hope they do. But I'm always here to serve and to help if you guys have questions about respective legislation. Yes, Ali.
I say the most important thing for elected officials, the most important thing for them is votes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So regardless of,
Ali, can I repeat that question really quick? So Ali just asked, can we assume that the most important thing for elected officials is votes? And I agreed, yes, it is.
And so, they have established people who do the research for them. So they know that, the political environment in the state or in the country. And so they weigh in, and when bill comes in, people follow and they know hey, it's better you go this way. So,
So you're talking about when House leadership says you better vote a certain way, you better stay in line, because this is what the party's going to do. Okay, the realities of the situation is that the Republicans control the House and Senate. That is the reality of the situation, and we have a Democratic governor. Obviously, you guys know that. We just got our budget done last week. Okay, let me just tell you the ridiculousness that happened. So in July, we passed, when I say we, the General Assembly, passed a spending plan for this year, this fiscal year, 2017, 2018. But they didn't pass a revenue package. So we literally decided how we were going to spend the money, but didn't know where we were going to get the money from. And then they decided not to come into session during the summer and blame the governor. But us lay people on the ground, we don't know. We hear things through the news, and we think, and people might think, oh, Governor Wolf is terrible. Why is he holding up the budget? But what you don't know is House Republicans refused to come into session over the summer. The Senate came into session, but House Republicans didn't come into session. So that's why we just got a revenue package last week, and why the state had to borrow money from the Department of Treasury. Yeah. It's terrible. But if more constituents advocated, held people accountable, maybe they would have come into session this summer. You know? Again, government goes both ways. Government goes both ways. Any other questions? To Ali's point, that I wanted to dig into that a little bit. So votes, elections, that is the lifeblood for an elected official, right? Unless you have a term limit, right? Like the governor, he can only serve at the most 2 terms. So when we think about this, we have to be very mindful of legislative district, right? What does their legislative district look like? What do the demographics of that legislative district look like? Have the demographics of that legislative district shifted, like here in Mechanicsburg, where you have a huge influx of South Asian immigrants? You need to tell that story to your legislator. Like, you might not think that our community is voting, but we are. And these are the numbers of people that voted in the 2017 election. We have to tell, or 2016 presidential, whatever you want to use. I'll talk about a little bit more, but I have a report here that I wanted to leave with you all. And I can also email you a copy of this. The Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs was really proud to partner with the Department of Community Economic Development and the New American Economy, as well as several other local Pittsburgh Asian American organizations. 3 weeks ago, we served as the national launch site for this report. It's created by the New American Economy, and it's called Power of the Purse: How Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders Contribute to the U.S. Economy. So there's really great data in here, and I also have Pennsylvania-specific data that I can follow up with and share with you all to disseminate with the group. But this is really powerful. And I want to preface this by saying that not all Asian Americans are afforded the same opportunities. Not all of us have come to this country the same way. There are many of us that have come as refugees and political asylees. But I want to share that, and there are many Asian ethnic groups that experience very difficult challenges when it comes to language access, poverty, violence, and health disparities. But I think it's critically important when we are engaging with a General Assembly that has 12 to 13 anti-immigrant bills to talk about the contributions that Asian Americans are providing to the state of Pennsylvania, how much millions of dollars we are paying in state taxes, state and local taxes, right? So I have a ton of copies of this report. I don't want to leave with any of them, so please take as many as you want. I can also provide the electronic report as well. We need to come to these meetings prepared with hard data. You can get hard data from reports like this. You can get hard data from the Census Bureau, but we need to tell our story through data. We need to have data points as well as our own personal stories. Does that make sense? Okay. So what to do when you're not being listened to, because that is the case. Not all legislators are created equally. Some are just not good and then should not be reelected. So here are some following examples of how constituents can communicate with the governor's office and elected officials around the country when they're unhappy with what they're doing. This is what people do with us every single day. Every single day the governor's office fields all of these things. People organize a written letter campaign or phone call campaign. Phone calls. You would think that in 2017 that we would have a better way, a more technologically advanced way to receive feedback from constituents, but the lifeblood is still phone calls. We rely so heavily on phone calls to decide what position we're going to take on a certain controversial issue. The problem is, who do you think inundates us with phone calls when we have something controversial like the Muslim ban or DACA, things that the governor actually doesn't have power over but can advocate for? Who do you think we get the calls from? Come on, you guys. You know. The people that are supporting the Muslim ban and the people that are supporting people that are against DACA, right? Those are the people that call our office. And we're not talking like 5 calls. We're talking like hundreds of calls. And so the challenge is, those of us that advocate against the Muslim ban and are for executive orders like DACA, we're calling our federal offices, but it's important not to forget the state offices too. Okay? We have to let the people that are supporting our communities know that we support them too. It's important. We record all of that data. That's critically important. I cannot emphasize enough how important phone calls are. So important. So important.
Sorry, simple question, Tiffany.
Yeah.
Do they listen to voicemails?
We do. I can't speak for other elected officials, but we do. We read every piece of mail that comes into the governor's office. We speak to every constituent. We listen to every voicemail, and it all gets logged.
And you read also news feeds like email,
Twitter.
yeah, Twitter.
Yeah,
news,
we also
like,
monitor
emails,
social media as well.
magazines and newspapers.
But unfortunately, if you ever look at the governor's Facebook, by the way, if you guys could all like Governor Wolf on Facebook, I would greatly appreciate it. And also the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have a new Facebook, which gives you updates. We have a hashtag PA Proud story series. But if you look at his Facebook and you look at all the people that comment on it, like we just had Happy Diwali Tihar, it's all people like, go back where you came from. You know what I mean? And it's less, it's like 80% negative, 20%, thank you, Governor Wolf. So we, in our communities, we need to be just as loud. We have to be. I know traditionally it's not like in our nature, but we are here now. We are here now, and we have to bring the best parts of our culture and our traditions with us, and also we also have to learn the best parts of the culture and traditions here. And one of them is to be civically and politically engaged. Any other questions? Write an opinion editorial. It's called an op-ed. You guys have heard op-ed, but the long version is opinion editorial. And submit it to your local newspaper. So like, you should submit op-eds to Penn Live. Why not? People on the other side are doing it. We should do it too. Any avenue that we can do, we should be doing. Does that make sense? We should exhaust every possible avenue. It's all about messaging. It's all about communications. What message are we putting out there about our community? And remember to always be respectful and professional. Even if you fundamentally, at the very core of your being, disagree with the other person, we have to be respectful and professional. Why? Because people always remember the last worst thing you did. Right? And I don't need to tell you that. You guys are the Muslim community. You have to apologize for people you don't even know, just because they claim to have the same faith. So we always have to be respectful and courteous, but we also have to stand up for ourselves. We don't have to be doormats. We need to stand up for ourselves, and we need to hold people accountable in a respectful and courteous way. With a smile. Any questions about this? Okay. Has anybody participated in like a phone banking or phone call campaign or letter writing campaign? Okay, Amina? Okay, so a couple of you. I would strongly recommend if there's a bill or something that you're seeing that you don't like, just organize it. Just one night, just something like this, a little bit of food, people with kids. It's okay, just start calling together. We could put together, you can get a script, write a script out. Everybody can use it. It's not as daunting as it might actually seem. It's a lot easier. And just call people. Yep, even on the weekends. But I recommend that. For those who may have wonderful jobs as mothers caring for children, who might be able to do it during the day, I strongly recommend that. You guys could get together at somebody's house, have some masala chai, and make some calls. See what I'm saying? You guys, we as a community are so much more powerful than we realize. We haven't even scratched the surface of our potential. In this room, I see members of city council, I see future state representatives and state senators. But you have to believe that. I can tell you all day, every day, until I'm blue in the face. But until you believe that you have power and that you can change and that you can actually make an impact, we're going to keep finding ourselves in the same pattern. When Patty Kim is the only Asian American woman, only Asian American, period, in the General Assembly, we're going to still have this pattern, right? We need more. More of us need to be brave enough, step up, and run. Okay. So after the meeting, some quick tips. Make sure to keep your staffer or the elected official. There's always going to be a staffer. Even if the elected official's in the meeting, they're going to bring in their staffer that handles whatever constituency that you're a part of. So make sure that you keep them abreast of what's going on. If you have a newsletter, if you have like, I don't know, an Eid newsletter that you send out, do you know what I mean? Like if you have something you share during the holidays, if you have an iftar coming up, invite them. People love food. They love cultural food. They love these experiences. They love learning about different cultures. Invite them to come. Send them a holiday card, right? Keep them engaged. I love all the thank you cards I get. I read all of them. I love every piece of mail that I get. So send them something. If you have a holiday party, invite them. Again, iftar, awesomeness, just food and community. Like, who wouldn't want to come to that? Invite them to your iftar. Don't hesitate to ask them for official greetings or proclamations. The House actually has a nicer one than the governor. It's like, it's big, it's really pretty, an official proclamation. Ask for official proclamations for celebrations or community events. You know what I mean? Even Muslim Capital Day, they could write you a proclamation for that. Anything that you'd ask me for, ask them for, because they have the same capabilities that we do in the governor's office. Again, people ask me for greetings all the time. It's a part of what we do, and we're happy to do it. It's part of our service. I think even if like your kid graduates from high school, I know we've done some of those before. You know, congratulatory message from the governor, congratulatory message from their state senator, and even go higher. You can request one from Senator Casey, Senator Toomey, and your congressperson. I just had an event for the former chair of the Governor's Advisory Commission on Asian Pacific American Affairs. He actually helped to create our commission, advocating for the creation of our commission under Governor Rendell. We're the youngest of the 4 affinity commissions in Governor Wolf's office, African American, Latino Commission for Women. And I got him 10 proclamations. Just showered him in proclamations because it feels really nice, right? So that is my presentation. Any questions? Any thoughts, any feedback? You don't even have to ask questions. What did you guys think? Did you learn something new?
Can I also ask the Skypers?
Oh yes, Skypers.
Any questions, comments from the Skype attendees?
So Shakila asked the question about how people can become more engaged and how to encourage people to how to get people excited, right, about this. So let me actually turn it around really quick and ask you, Shakila, it's 6:30 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and you and your husband are here, and I know you guys have a beautiful daughter. Why are you here? You just worked a full day at the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and I know that. Why are you here? You could be anywhere. Why are you here? Actually, tell me, why are you here?
Because I think it's important, and I think I gave the idea for it, so it's a shame if I didn't show up, right?
She's a concerned citizen, I guess.
Because she's a concerned citizen, because you care about your community, because you want to learn, okay? Ali, why are you here?
I'm passionate in involving community and,
Ali said he's passionate about involving community and engaging.
I'm interested in civic engagement and I have a political background. So.
And may want to run for office one day.
I would like to make a change in a community.
Okay.
So.
And Ali would like to make a change in a community. You've got to figure out what matters to that person that you're trying to recruit. Because this takes time. This takes a lot of time. And you guys aren't going to get paid for it, right? You're just going to do this because you really care. You've got to figure out how to get to that person's why. What matters to them? Because we only do things if we want to do them, right? So you've got to figure out why. So let me ask Naveen, why are you here tonight? So Naveen shared that she wanted the opportunity to learn and to figure out, how does government work in the United States? How can she be engaged in an informed manner? That actually reminds me of something that I didn't put up here. Please take minutes during your meeting. I don't care who you meet with. If you meet with a staffer, the President of the United States, you probably don't want to meet with him, but if you meet with the governor, take minutes. Please, please, please take minutes, because if you don't document it, it's like it never happened. And minutes are a way for you to immediately, you should follow up within 24 hours of that meeting and say, this is what we talked about, and these are the action items we discussed, right? You want to follow up. You got to hold people accountable. I was just asked if the New American Economy report was something that the commission had written, and if there were other reports for around immigrant contributions and Muslim contributions. So I just wanted to share that this report was actually written by a think tank in New York called the New American Economy. It was founded by former Mayor Bloomberg to help bridge the conversation around immigrants in America. And so there are reports actually on refugee contributions and immigrant contributions. You just have to go to their website, New American Economy, and you can look them up. They're always doing reports. That's the great thing about them, is they're a data hub. And they come down and actually do presentations too. So the brother from Pittsburgh, which is my hometown, by the way, grew up in South Oakland, asked the question of, if you're a smaller minority group, how do you organize, and how, if what the lifeblood of legislators, what they're looking for is votes, how do you convey the importance of your community? So my favorite word is solidarity and coalition building. You have to build coalitions with other groups. If we can't, like Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, we're only 500,000 in Pennsylvania. Out of a almost 13 million population, that's like what, I'm not very good at math, it's like 3.7, 3.8% of the population. That's tiny, right? But when we partner with Latinos and African Americans, now we're 4 million. Now you better watch out. So we have to build solidarity and coalitions. And there's a huge African American Muslim population, right? We can partner with them. And we should be. And I know through CAIR you guys are doing that. Did that answer his question?
Yeah,
okay.
He says he met you last year at Governor Wolf's office. He says hi.
Hi. Okay. Any other questions? You guys feel free to ask me anything that you're thinking of. So the question was, how do you encourage people to get kind of politically engaged and to get out the vote?
Even just vote. I mean, they don't have, just.
Get out the vote. So there's actually something, have you guys ever heard of the term GOTV? It's literally get out the vote. It's like a political term. And people hold like GOTV block parties, like always, like elections are a Tuesday. So like the Saturday, Sunday before Tuesday, we have a whole bunch of get out the vote stuff. And so if there's a specific candidate that you're supporting, we're talking about like presidential, that's like huge. You can connect with somebody's campaign and say, hey, we're doing a big get out the vote thing. Could they swing on by? And actually, the governor went to a community in South Philadelphia. It's a predominantly refugee community, Southeast Asian, Bhutanese, South Asian, Bhutanese, Laotian, Cambodian, Vietnamese refugees. A sitting governor had never visited that community. Now, that was a campaign thing, so I had to like take a personal time for that, but we did a get out the vote, and it was so meaningful. So, so connect with the campaign.
People that will, like, as Dollar Action, we were posting, if you don't have a ride, we'll come and get you. We'll, make sure that, you can go vote, and we were trying to, and there was people going to the masjids, registering people, and,
This is be pleasantly persistent. Don't give up. Don't give up. This is not, it's not always the most appealing. It's not the hottest work, but it's the most important. And you don't give up. There's always ways to think of creative ideas. There are people that do this for a living that maybe you could pick their brain, campaign staff that you could talk to about how to engage people. This is literally what people do for a living, is engagement.
I think it has a lot to do with people coming from different communities, as you mentioned before, because they're not used to their voice being heard, and they're not used to change happening in, you know, our home countries and things like that with their vote. It's like you get somebody in office and they don't care about you. Or some of those countries, or you know, they're not very, you know, so when they come here, I feel like a lot of people don't understand that yes, they do have a place and they do have a way to do it. I think that's maybe what we need to work on more is letting them know.
It's education. Yeah. And you guys are recording me, so you can show this, but you guys can actually give this presentation, right? Let's democratize knowledge. The other piece of this, and I just want to share this because I see this, I work with many diverse Asian communities across the whole Commonwealth, and I see this again and again, and I don't want this for the Muslim community, is there's not only one person to be the leader, there is enough Islamophobia to go around and then some. All of you can organize events. All of you can be leaders. These are skills that all of you have, even our young people. They can be doing things in their schools, and they are doing things. Like, we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We can't wait any longer. We see what happens when we do that. The terrible things like the Muslim ban. So we need to step up, and we need to stop saying, that's for somebody else. That's for another day. And we need to say, no, that time is now, and that person is me, and I'm just going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. Maybe I'm going to call Tiffany and figure it out. Or, you know, but we're just going to start doing. Because half the time, you guys, I mean, I do know what I'm doing, but half the time I don't always know how I'm going to get something done, but I just know it's going to get done. And we figure it out. And when you have community supporting, you guys have a whole, like, couple masjids, like, you guys have true community. When you have that, you can't go wrong. But I've seen it in so many different communities where one person becomes the gatekeeper, and I don't want that for the Muslim community. I want all of you to have a stake in this community. I want all of you to have a role, and I want all of you to have a voice. But you have to say, that's going to be me. And I'm going to do this with my community, for my community, right? It's like FUBU, for us, by us. We have to do that. We have to figure that out. Erum asked me something really powerful last Tuesday after our meeting when we were having this discussion is, Tiffany, like, how do you do it? And, you know, one disclaimer is I don't have children. I know that takes up a lot of your time is children. They're important. I don't have children. My mother lives with me so she can walk our dog, and my husband is incredibly supportive. But the other piece of that is I just do it. We create limitations in our mind of what we think we can achieve. Take that away. You came to this country. You did something most people can never even dream of doing. And you're making it. You can do anything.
Oh, it's a
Thank you.
powerful note to finish on. Thank you so much, Tiffany. It's difficult to have someone who's